But the first one is Pelagianism. Pelagius was a monk from Britain who came to Rome at the time of St. Augustine and saw that many Christians in Rome and throughout the Roman Empire were living very sinful lives. And they were excusing their sin by referring to Augustine's prayer, which was, "O God, command whatever thou wilt, but give what thou dost command." And Pelagius said, no, we don't have to wait for God to give us a gift of ability to not sin. We are charged by God to obey him, and therefore we can. So God would not command us to obey him if we weren't able to. So that's where we get the term Pelagianism, and it was condemned as a heresy by several early church councils, and all the reformers agreed that it's a heresy. So in Pelagianism, humanity, excuse my stick people, humanity is fallen, yes. That is, according to Pelagius and people who follow him, we're born into a world that is so corrupted by sin that all we have around us are bad examples. And that's why most of us sin, because our parents, our siblings, our friends, our civic leaders, everybody around us sins, and so it's kind of a social disease. We catch it from those around us. But he didn't believe in original sin. He didn't believe that we're born corrupt because of what Adam and Eve did. We're not born with a broken, sinful human nature. So in his view, yes, we are kind of fallen, but we have the moral ability in and of ourselves to totally obey God, and that's what God expects. So God throws a rope down into the pit, which is an illustration of our human condition of fallenness, and he says, grab onto the rope and climb out. And the rope represents the law of God. So salvation in Pelagianism is using the law of God, God's commands, to save yourself by simply obeying them. You're all able to do that. Now just go do it. Now Pelagius believed that when you sin, you can pray for forgiveness and God will forgive you, but it's better to never need to do that. And of course, Augustine strongly opposed him, as did Jerome, Augustine's friend, the monk in Palestine, and he was condemned as a heretic. And the main argument against him was, if this is true, Christ did not need to die. So for that and other reasons, it blatantly contradicts the Bible. For by grace are you saved through faith, and that not of yourselves is a gift of God, Ephesians 2:8-9. So that's out, okay? But there are people who still believe that. I'd say that's a very common belief. But more common among Christians, especially in America, I would say, I don't really know about that much outside of America, is what I call, or what is historically called, semi-Pelagianism. I feel like I'm up here giving a school lesson. It's kind of weird.
We need it, Dr. Olson.
Okay, so what is semi-Pelagianism? After the controversy between Augustine and Pelagius, there were some monks in the Roman Empire who developed a position that they considered kind of between Pelagius and Augustine. Augustine answered Pelagius by eventually saying, if you're saved, it's because God chose you and gives you irresistible grace, and you're one of God's elect, what we call Calvinism. So some of these monks developed what later came to be called semi-Pelagianism. And their view was, yes, yes to Augustine, yes, we're broken, we're fallen, we're helpless in the bottom of this pit, but God comes along and throws the law down, which is the rope, and yells down to us and says, here, grab onto the end of the rope, and I'll pull you out. But you have to take the initiative. I'm not going to even start this process. So semi-Pelagianism says the initiative in salvation is ours.
So that's like saying, you take one step to God, he'll take 10 to you.
Exactly.
So that's semi-Pelagianism.
I call it touched by an angel theology. Have you ever seen a rerun of Touched by an Angel? I remember one episode where this beautiful angel with a Scottish accent is talking to a man in a hospital. And the man says, I'm such a sinner, God could never forgive me. And she says to him, no, you don't understand. All you have to do is climb up toward God as far as you can go and reach out toward him, and then he'll reach back and pull you up the rest of the way. So this is this illustration. God says, here, grab onto the end of that, start the process, Exercise a goodwill toward me, and when I see that, I will pull you out. So it's kind of a halfway position between Pelagianism and Augustinian Christianity. Well, okay, so let's go to Calvinism, which we could call other things, Augustinianism, or a variety of things. In this view, we are at the bottom of the pit. I'm going to draw two here, terribly. But they're laying at the bottom of the pit, broken, helpless, dead in trespasses and sins. God throws the rope down, the law, and they're totally unable to do anything with it. And God knows that. So he comes down, not really on the law, but comes down into the pit, wraps a rope around some people, and lifts them out. Irresistible grace. Unconditional election, irresistible grace. He doesn't choose the ones he's going to bring out of the pit because he sees anything in them. That wouldn't be unconditional, see. So he simply pulls some of them out of the pit and leaves others in the bottom. That's double predestination. Now some Calvinists say, oh no, we don't believe in double predestination, we believe in single predestination. That's a difference without a distinction, in my opinion. If God chooses to leave some in the bottom of the pit when he could take them all out, that's double predestination. But I will admit that Calvinists like R.C. Sproul say the decision to bring some out of the pit is a positive decree and decision on God's part, and the other is negative. He just passes over the others. Again, that's not very convincing to me. You might as well just say he chooses some to save and chooses some to damn. So that's Calvinism, unconditional election. Some are brought out of the pit by God without their help. They don't do anything. And he chooses them unconditionally, not based on anything he sees in them. Arminianism. Now people are always asking me, isn't there a middle ground between Calvinism and Arminianism? My answer is no. Arminianism is the middle ground between Calvinism and semi-Pelagianism. So what is it? Okay, so we're in the bottom of the pit. We're laying there helpless. We can't do anything. Total depravity. We agree with that. Let's keep with the analogy here. God throws the rope down, the law. We can't do anything with it. We're too helpless. But God doesn't want to come down and save us without our making a decision to let him. So he pours water into the pit. And as the water comes down into the pit, God says, let the water lift you out. Simply decide to let my grace, which is the water, this is God's grace, lift you out. In other words, if we are saved, it's not because we did something to help God's grace. It's because we made a decision to not resist God's grace. That's all we do. That's Arminianism. It's not that we contribute like some work, but we let God's prevenient grace work in our lives and lift us out of the pit. So that if we get out of the pit, we can't boast because the water did everything. All we did was relax and let it save us.